Matt, can I ask you a question, Matt?
Yeah.
Are you satisfied with where you're at in business right now?
Amortization, a bit of a difficult one to say that. Basically, as you may or may not have seen, I went on a podcast with James Sinclair and we talked about businesses, buy-to-let property, all that sort of stuff. I'm going to watch it back and I'm going to give you my reaction to the various points. So hopefully it makes really, really good content and interesting to hear my thoughts and things in a more kind of controlled environment rather than that kind of live interaction. So grab yourself a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, whatever you want, maybe in a Charles Cott's branded mug, and watch me talk about my main business, Charles Cott's Property Management, and really where we've come from and where we're going to be going soon. In all honesty, I wasn't too sure if I'd get on the show, so I probably, if I had my time again, I would do slightly better effort at filling in the form with maybe some more intuitive questions, but nonetheless I thought it was really interesting and interesting how the podcasts are all aimed at different business owners, really, right from your kind of startup to maybe someone like myself who is a bit more established, if you like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the video a bit of a watch and then give my reaction to the various comments. I'm a fairly placid person, so in the interview I might not be quite as brash and bold and kind of, arms flailing everywhere as James. He's an entertainer. I'm more of a kind of thinker and come back with answers. So it'll be interesting, hopefully, for you guys to see my reactions to the video, the final edit, as we go along. Obviously, you can watch the original podcast with James Sinclair in full. I'm sure there'll be links in the description and the comments below. Go and check that out if you want to, or hopefully the little thumbnail might be sufficient enough for you. So we'll get stuck in now.
Buy-to-let property investment. Now, this was an industry that I fell in love with. I had loads of houses and flats, and I used to make decent money from it. Then the government changed their idea. They taxed it to death, and I've fallen out of love with it. I've gone cold on the whole industry. Now, today, my guest is in love with buy-to-let property investment. He wants to buy more of it. But is he actually making any money from it? Why does he want to grow it? Well, that's the conversation today. Strap yourselves in. So we're talking property today here on the Business Broadcast. Me and JB. Hello, JB.
No, hello, campers.
Hello, campers. Welcome back.
People like
to the business.
People are like, what's going on? Has he started yet?
I do, just as a side hustle, I do love the way he's put all his Rossi ice cream and his book in the middle. Like, we're doing a little bit of that here, so it's all good. That's not copying him. That's just what I do all the time. I always wear a Charles Cott's gilet or one of the other firms or whatever. I'm like a walking billboard of advertisement continuously.
Or what?
Well,
come on, give it a bit of enthusiasm.
Hello, campers. Welcome back. We're talking about property today.
You've lost all enthusiasm for property, haven't you?
No. I love property as long as it's commercial and it's attached to a business. I really think it's very hard to make money.
I think the reason why James loves the commercial properties personally is because he's got a lot of them. They're full of repairing and insuring leases and the rest of it. But the barrier to entry, which he constantly talks about, putting moats around your business and all the rest of it, it is a lot higher with commercial property. You often have to put down a 30% deposit. If you can demonstrate the business itself can purchase the property, which is a lot of what James talks about, then there are different ways of financing it. But if you're literally just going, I've done buy-to-let, it's a bit boring, I want to go and start buying warehouses or offices, generally speaking, you're looking at a 30% deposit, maybe as much as 35% in order to get that there. So they are even bigger than buy-to-let property. And I think James, like most of the people throughout the early 2000s, bearing in mind he started buying when he was 20, he would have bought those properties in his own name. So he would be encompassed by that buy-to-let tax, if you like, Section 24. So it'd be in his interest to get rid of those. And that's probably why he's fallen out of love with them, because I think most people probably would if you're not going to make any money out of them and you're just reliant upon the capital growth. I suspect his business structure and lifestyle is very cash intense. So actually relying upon something just literally going up in value is not really in their kind of remit in his sort of empire, if you like.
I really think it's very hard to make money from owning residential property, mainly because there's this thing called the government that every time there's a budget out, like, we don't like landlords, we're going to charge them more stamp duty, we're going to not allow them to claim interest, and then everyone goes, you're just not structuring it properly, you should put it in a limited company and restructure. Like, even then, higher interest rates, I was speaking to my accountant about it, not that we give tax advice, which does seem to happen quite often here. If you are a person earning more than £50,000 a year, I think buy-to-let property investment becomes way less attractive.
Unless maybe you own it.
Literally touching on the subject that I just said about it will be on your personal circumstances. So obviously in the UK, £50,000 is where you go into the higher tax bracket and you have to start paying 40% tax. So it's interesting to see that, that is the main driver. And obviously he's sort of already knocking this, like put it in a limited company thing. But I guess he's saying that the interest rates are higher. They are marginally higher, but the fact that you can claim the interest back way negates that. And then for us personally as a group, the fact that we don't have to declare that income, it's only profit income, is far more tax efficient in that regard, really. So it's not going on our personal tax returns all the time. We can deploy that capital into the business. Maybe some bits that are being invested or loss making or whatever can be fueled from that. So there are bigger advantages. And I think the government personally are moving more towards buy-to-let landlords in the UK, especially residential. You must really do it as a business. It can't just be like a side hustle or like a small pension pot anymore. It needs to be an actual business, bona fide. You've got to be registered in the future, all that kind of stuff. So they're moving away from like mum and dad just buying a one buy to let because it's a good retirement income
outright and you're just collecting rent from it. But then I would argue, say you own a £350,000 house, what would you say the rent is roughly on a £350,000 house, JB?
Depends where you are in the country, doesn't it? But probably
just a
£1,000 quid.
Yeah, £1,000, £1,200.
I mean, I don't know about you, we're in the southeast, but £1,000 for a 3-bedroom house, I think most people would bite their hand off at that. I know they're sort of in the southeast as well, so I would say that is probably a little bit off the mark. Obviously London and surrounding counties and cities will be a lot more expensive. Here in Brighton, a 3-bed house will be about £2,000 a month. It's calculations are different. And you probably can get a 3-bedroom house for about £300,000 on the outskirts of Brighton, somewhere like Saltine, Peacehaven. Anybody wants to Google Maps that area. It's only like 20 minutes into town. So, those figures are not quite accurate because that's like double what they're saying.
So you've got $350,000 of hard capital making you £1,200 a month.
Yeah.
And don't forget, you probably won't have £350,000 worth of hard capital because people don't tend to own the properties outright. They'll put in a deposit, so it'll be typically 25%. So you'd be looking at about 75k worth of capital returning you £2,000 minus your mortgage. Maybe it makes £1,000 a month, maybe £800 a month in return for 75k. I haven't done the maths on that. Maybe we can add that as a screenshot, but the 75k returning £800 a month, you times that by 12 and that will give you your net profit for the year as a percentage. So hopefully we'll display that over there because I'm doing this in real time and I'm not that good at maths.
Pathetic.
It is, isn't it? Well, you could put it into a Vanguard, not financial advice, or like one of those other sort of
like a government bond.
Like a tracking bond. Yeah.
Just to declare, I love Vanguard. It is such a good way of investing for pensions, and I really wish people would look at their pensions and things like that and various ISAs in a little bit more detail so they can get better returns on them. I can't give financial advice, but maybe we'll do a video on that in the future. We have a lot of conversations here with my staff and the rest of it about ISAs, pensions, self-invested, using things like Vanguard, Hargreaves Lansdown. There's loads of different platforms. Obviously, I'm not a financial advisor, so I can't give advice, but we can talk about our journeys and what we've done and why we've done it, really. So, hopefully we'll do a video on that in the future.
Government bonds are great at the moment because we've got higher interest rates, or actually into a bloody business, which you could make infinite returns if you know what you're doing.
It is mad when you think about it, isn't it? Because it is just the standard Middle England thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, because
go to school, get education.
Granddad done it, Nanny's done it. There's always someone in your family that's
who's made a few quid,
that loves telling everyone,
yeah.
I've got 10 buy-to-let properties now. Look at me. But that game, I think, is coming to an end.
Yeah. How much of a portfolio of residential stuff did you have?
I've got a block of flats right now. I've sold 3 in the last sort of 24 months and put them into commercial property.
3 like blocks or 3 individual
3
bits?
Houses.
Right.
I mean, I've still got quite a bit. I'm struggling to remember it all.
Are you trying to exit it, although in a sort of tax efficient way?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Is the aim of the game to get out of all of it then?
Yeah.
Is it really?
And put it all into commercial.
Right.
Obviously, at this stage, I'm in the background listening to this conversation, and I think there's one important thing that we don't talk about in this whole video is when you want to borrow money. So say like you wanted to do a roof development or build a block of flats or maybe buy another business or whatever, you can actually get second charges. So it doesn't mean that you need to sell your property. You can actually get a bank where they come along and they go, well, you own half of the property and the other half's mortgaged. They can give you a second charge. They have a right over the equity in your house, basically. So you can borrow the money, but they've got the security that they can force you to sell the house. Now, they are more complicated than normal mortgages, and your original lender might not like it and so on. So there's lots of hoops to jump through, but it doesn't mean that you've necessarily got to just instantly sell your property and pump all that cash back into your business. Obviously, if you physically need the cash, then that's different. But if you're looking to leverage that money, then that is a good avenue to do that with.
What's your go-to thing at the moment? In commercial-wise?
Commercial
light
property.
industrial?
Yeah, light industrial stuff like James Martin. Love all that stuff. But
why do you like that so much? Because there's
always, I don't know, just something turns me on about it.
I suppose there's not really an answer. There's something that turns you on about it, and maybe they'll in a minute they're going to explain a little bit more. But I suppose that is an answer in a way, because you need to be excited about what you do. And if he isn't excited by residential property, then that's fine by him. I quite like residential property, if I'm honest. It fits with our existing avenue. He talks a lot about kind of like vertical integration, horizontal integration. For us, we have a lettings department, we've got building surveying, we've got property that we develop, property that we rent out, which then goes into our lettings department, all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of vertical integration going on here. But for me, we work closely with the local council to rehouse people that are a bit unfortunate. They've come across, hard times or whatever. And we try and help them out. We work with the council to do that. So that for me does excite me. Like, I like that. And actually it isn't a particularly profitable business model for us. Yes, they pay the going rate and so on, but they do most of these people tend to sort themselves out and they get another partner or they move on with their life, whatever's happened, so that we don't get people staying for long periods of time, like 10, 15 years or anything. The cycle is probably higher than it would be if you were sort of traditional renters, if you like. So it isn't the most profitable one, but it does float my boat, as he says, or whatever, tickle my funny bone or something.
Do you get frustrated that there's all these taxes and all this pressure put on? I know you're exiting the buy-to-let market as it stands at the moment, but it seems like buy-to-let landlords, of which I guess I still am one on some level, you get vilified and there's that whole perception of like, oh, it's a rich money-grabbing landlord. But actually there's just a massive lack of housing stock at the moment. And if people don't...
I think it touches on a good point there. I mean, and I think that's why the government are shifting more towards people doing it as an actual business rather than just doing it as individuals, because there are a few people out there that don't do it very well and they give a really bad name for everybody. And you have to remember that for us, it is a business model. So we are taking our profits, putting them into assets, essentially. And you'll remember I have the slow building, fast building pounds, which James talks about a bit as well. So it's about making sure that those assets are generating money to go back into the business. So if you want to say the business is greedy because it makes a profit, then fine, you can say that. But ultimately, if we don't make a profit, then we don't exist. So and we don't employ people. We don't put national insurance back into the system, all that kind of stuff. So, I think that's kind of where he's sort of going with that, really. And I think that matches the government's kind of wish to get it more towards being a commercial entity rather than your kind of mum and dad buying a handful for retirement.
Rents to other people.
Yeah, that's going to
Where's everyone going to live? Like, where does it actually
that's
end?
a problem that the Irish government found out because they've reduced all the penal taxes and stopping landlords investing in residential property because not everyone actually wants to own their property. There are a big amount of people that are frustrated that they can't get the deposit together.
Yeah.
And I think if you really look at it, if you hear what your grandparents went through to get there, they always tell us, it's only £5,000 for a house, but they might have only earned £500 a year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all
back then.
relative,
So it's
isn't
all
it?
relative. And actually, I think now that there was no help to buy schemes back then.
No.
And usually it was one family working people back then. I'm not being sexist. It was a male-dominated workforce, and women stayed at home.
Yeah.
So you had one salary to pay everything, and people didn't have far-flung holidays. 2 cars.
Yeah.
They didn't have all. It was, one car if you was very lucky. You ate at home. You didn't go out for dinner. Going out for dinner was a big treat.
Yeah.
And so it is. If you want to own property, and I know people will slag me off in the comments for about what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it. If you want to own a house right now, you just have to create a side hustle, work 7 days a week for 18 months, like I did, and you get the deposit together.
It's interesting because it didn't get slated in the comments for that, because I think in our hearts we know that is definitely the case, really, that you just got to work hard.
There you go. I'm just going to leave that to drop for a moment.
But if you want to turn property into a business, I think that's becoming more and more difficult. And that's where we're going to enter into this conversation with our friend today,
Matthew Cox,
who has a business called Charles Cox.
It's very confusing.
And I said, and you said, that must be his dad. But no, that's just his middle name. And he decided to use that to make himself sound better than
Sound posher.
sound posher. When he was younger.
It does work though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does work.
Charles Cox, I feel like I want to entrust them with my property management needs.
Oh, I thought, I think you're wrong. I think I'm Matthew Cox from matthewcox.co.uk. Oh, you're the only one in the business. I think he's saying, I'm Matthew Cox from charlescox.co.uk. A long lineage of family.
Yeah.
Funny thing is we had this conversation a little bit beforehand, but not all of it. And that is literally the reason why I did it, because it makes it sound more established. It is an older person's name and it suits that kind of property industry. So it was quite nice in my own heart that they kind of concluded that that's why I'd done it off their own back, really. But it is a question I get asked all the time, who is Charles? And you'll see in the future podcasts, we have found a Charles.
I think that's what it
Perception
is.
is reality, baby.
Yeah. So tell us about the business. He's been
trading for 6 years, estimated monthly revenue of £130,000. Team members, he's got 35 of them. And there's a couple of challenges. Challenge number 1, we own a number of companies, some 100%, others are investments, but I'm struggling to grow some of them as I spread myself thin. Challenge number 2, buying property seems rather slow or relying on mortgages rather than loans. How do you get the bigger deals? And we own...
Just wanted to quickly touch on that as well. The £100,000 per calendar month and the 35 team members. Somebody put in the comments that it seems relatively low. It's a bit of a difficult questionnaire to fill in, actually, because the property management business as a whole, Charles Cox with the surveying, is doing about 100,000. But we have other businesses, business outsourcing, We Group and all the rest of it for bookkeeping and various other tasks, general admin, answering people's calls and things like that, and handyman services and so on. Add all of that together, it's 35 members of staff, but the property management business is only turning over that. So there's a couple of comments to say that the profit margins must be quite tight given 35 members of staff and 1.2 million pounds of turnover. Well, that's the reason for that, because actually that's the total staff, not the staff that were here. There's actually about 20 staff that work in the kind of block management property side. So hopefully that will put some of your minds at rest.
Challenge number 3, working on my own brand. How do you go about this? We always ask people, where do you want to be in 1 year's time? And he said, buying commercial space with a solid system in place Sold low profit buy to let in personal name. There you go. He's another one who's out of the market and be better at deal structuring and wants to get to 2 million.
So there's just three things there. So one is I wanted to know how you deal with spreading yourself thin, because that is actually one of my main questions, although actually the podcast is, for obvious reasons, they've got to market themselves and the rest of it. It did focus in on property because that's a really good topic for James to pick on and get involved with. But actually, really, one of the things I wanted to work on was how do I kind of grow all these multiple businesses? And it's a bit of a shame we didn't really touch on that, but maybe I'll have another go at it at a later date. And then I think the kind of final question was about the social media side of it. Obviously, I applied to be on the show before we launched this channel and the rest of it. So I'd kind of already made the decision that was something that we wanted to work on. But obviously, these things move quickly and this takes a while to get out and edit and so on for their point.
Pound in a turnover. What does a business look like when it's finished, when someone else can truly run it so it could be sold if so desired? So it doesn't sound like there's a plan there. There's not a plan there. Do you make the profit you want to make? If so, what is it? We've grown margins, but they have been squeezed. Day-to-day in the business, he does 65% marketing, strategy and networking, and 35% operations. And then he's got some questions that he would like to ask you.
No, not a particular plan. I just, I like the phrase he uses quite a lot, James, is get it ready for sale, even if you have no intention of selling it. I don't know whether I want to sell or what I want to do really at this stage. But I would like to be in a position where the business is either sellable, or I could be in a position where I can go off to do other things and hence grow other bits of the business without this requiring me so much.
Do you
Would
feel
you
like
now
we
choose, over the top, so buy-to-let property, let's say you have a windfall. Obviously, I know what you're going to do. You're just going to like buy a roller coaster or like a theme park or something like that.
No. If I sell any of my buy-to-let properties, I make sure I put it into more slow pounds.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I don't want to just flip it into trade, no.
What about if you needed some cash to buy something for the trading business? Would you do that, trade it, and then buy more slow pound stuff, or is that your hard and fast rule?
Give me an exact example of what you're thinking.
So let's say you sold 2 or 3 things, or sold like the little block of flats, for example. You get £1 million and you need £1 million for the down payment on another big food services company.
Yeah, might do that. If I was, what I want to do is be creating more income with the money. I don't want to just put it into cash flow.
Right.
So that's interesting. You see, where if you hark back to my comments before, his goal isn't necessarily because he dislikes buy-to-let property or anything. He wants to create more income from the equity he's got in there. So if you imagine you've got cash deployed and then it returns a certain amount, he wants to get that higher, which is where I think fundamentally maybe some of the opinions on these things are slightly different to how they are where we are locally in the southeast. In the Brighton area, where property prices are, rental prices are fairly high in comparison. So if he's taking his £1,000, whereas I'm getting £2,000 for the same property, it might feel slightly different about that, rather than taking that money and then re-injecting it into what he's calling more slow building pounds. So he's not doing that to fuel a dinosaur park or a roller coaster, as JB says, but more to buy more commercial property because he feels that will give him a higher return on the money, not necessarily because he's out of love of residential, so to speak.
Right, we've spoken about Matthew sort of almost behind his back for the last sort of 20 odd minutes. We might as well bring him on. Matthew, are you there?
So just before I start, I just wanted to clarify a couple of things, because there were some comments in the comments on this video that say that they kind of talked over me, or perhaps their faces were a bit funny or something like that. Just to clear up, and to be fair to their production, although it's their own fault, they need a Cat5 cable, which is about 20 meters long, to run from an internet connection straight into their software, or straight into their hardware, and they had forgotten it. So they were trying to use the Wi-Fi, and up to this point in time, it's only been done over kind of a video feed, a bit of software they use called Riversong. It was fairly okay. The second that the kind of filming bit started, and I guess they're maybe more intense on their recording equipment, it literally wouldn't sync properly, and we were there for ages. I mean, they set aside like an hour for you to come on and do it, and the next guest overran by ages. They were in the room when I was in there and the rest of it. So it's funny, really. It's just we were the first people. I was the first person on that day, and they just didn't go to plan because they were missing a cable.
Can you ask him what his business is in his own words?
Can you explain Charles Cox Group and everything that you guys do for the listener at home?
Within 30 seconds.
Within 30 seconds.
Yeah, so we're a property management company. We're kind of what we call multidiscipline. So we kind of do all different aspects of property. Our main kind of bulk of business, or like 70% of it, is block management. So anywhere where there's a service charge to collect, so typically blocks of flats. That has then led us on to forming different departments like building surveying, property letting side of things, development, various other bits and bobs, all connected to property. The only thing we don't really do at the moment is estate agency, but we do all the other aspects of property. And as a kind of spur on from that, we've acquired a number of businesses to do with property or business outsourcing related services. So we run another company called We Group, which does business outsourcing, and we also have our own maintenance team as well. So that's kind of like the Charles Cox Group, if you like, is the kind of overarching parent company.
Well done, Matthew. I mean, that was like its own podcast there, wasn't it?
Well versed.
So how many years have you been going? I know it says here we need to get this changed on our notes. It says 6+ years, but that's the maximum you can choose. How many years has it actually been going?
Yeah, so Charles Cox has been going since 2010. Prior to that, I was doing the same thing at a partnership somewhere else.
Fine.
But I didn't overly gel particularly well with being in a partnership because it's quite difficult to get things done, as I'm sure you're aware, and there's too many opinions and views on things. So I left that and set up on my own.
So we're now...
So just to touch on it, you can see, like, I know James is a flamboyant character, but his reaction's like a little bit like kind of he wants to get in there and ask or whatever. But at this moment, I've literally got a blank screen and I've had to phone JB like 4 times to get it all reconnected and the rest of it. So I think they're conscious that they chewed up their classic kind of 20 minutes at the start talking, and then they're suddenly like, God, the next guest is coming on soon and we haven't even started doing anything with Matt. So I think, it is part of life. These things don't always pan out all right. But you can see the sort of a level of frustration, I suppose.
Yeah, got it. So now doing some decent revenues, do you feel like you're making profit?
Well, we've grown a lot during and since the pandemic, and I think profit margins have been squeezed a bit because we've become inefficient in some places.
Why?
We don't always do things efficiently, from spending money to recruiting and stuff like that, just because as you grow, I found it quite difficult.
You can see, like, he's asked me why twice and I can't hear a word he's saying. So that is a good example there of how it might come across he's being a bit arrogant, I would say. So the comments are justified without the context of what's going on here.
To keep control of all of the various aspects of it, and as you're growing, there's an air of kind of like act quickly to stabilise things. So this year's sort of project for me was to try and sort of stabilise things and get the profit margins back a bit. Also things like we have a buy-to-let.
So the growth is eroding margins because you employ more people, is that why?
Yeah, primarily employment, but obviously that is, as we grow, because we're not working efficiently sometimes, that is, eroding the profit margins. And then things like the buy-to-let property. So we have a portfolio of 14 residential properties that we've bought, refurbished and refinanced as a kind of normal sort of standard model. With the higher interest rates and the tax legislations, they've become less profitable.
So why carry on doing that? I noticed in the notes you want to do more buy-to-let property. If you know it's not that profitable anymore? Why do more?
I'd like to get into either buying whole blocks of flats or possible commercial property, that sort of thing.
Why blocks
and
of
funding
flats?
that I found is quite slow. Well, it feeds into our existing business model, so we can manage the block of flats, we can do the surveying, we can then do all the rentals as well through the lettings department. So kind of as a business, we're quite geared up, and it feeds the other bits of the business as well.
Is that just justifying it to yourselves? Because,
I think it's a bit strange, the comments that he's just about to make about justifying it to ourselves, because you have to remember that I'm talking about trying to get out a low profit residential property and get into more profitable either commercially owned property, residential, or commercial property owned for a commercial vehicle. But the thing is he's asking me, why do I want to get into more and stuff like that? And that's really the reason, but obviously the technical issues are preventing us from portraying that. But it's interesting, his next few comments, really, because I'm not sure they're quite aligned with how I would see it.
if you're going to rent it out, you've got 6 flats in the block and you get £6,000 a month, that your rental company make another £500-600 a month. Do we really want to tie up that much capital for another £600 a month?
So it's at the time, I don't think I really addressed this question properly, because obviously the technical issues are referred to. But you've got to remember that we're not tying up like 300,000 to buy the property. It's only a percentage of that, maybe 25%, because we're either buying them or refinancing them to that. And then I thought it was a bit strange, because he's quite a big lover of like vertical integration and feeding things across your supply chain or whatever. So having a building surveying department that can sort out any issues, the block management department that can run the block of flats, and then the lettings department, actually all bits of the business either make money or save it money, depending on whether we're charging for something or not. So, which is not dissimilar to the way that he's sort of grown his business, where you've got the Rossi ice cream, and then he goes off and then he says, oh, I'll buy the factory so that we can make our ice creams, and then we're going to buy the delivery chain, and it's like, the same question is like, are you just justifying that? Because actually you can outsource delivery, you could outsource the ice cream making or whatever. But I think when you're in control of the supply chain, that gives you a much bigger opportunity to make sure that it runs smoothly, and that is invaluable as well, as much as saving the money.
So let's go on to buying a commercial space. Your challenges, where in a number of companies, some 100%, other investments, but I'm struggling to grow some of them as I spread myself too thin. My medicine that I would prescribe for that challenge is you don't start anything else unless you can afford the management that are better than you to manage the existing. And that's the folly that most people don't do. So they go, I'm a superhero business, I'll just set this up, set that up, set this up, but they don't put the management in place, and that's why it falls apart. What say you?
Yeah, I think that's correct to some degree. Some of the other business that we've got, the business outsourcing that I mentioned, they actually have 2 people that run the telephone call handling service and the bookkeeping side and general admin. So
is that causing you any problems?
It's more the growth of it, to be honest, because they're so tied up in the day-to-day running of it. Yeah. It's quite difficult for us to actually kind of grow the business. And because Charles Cox is so much bigger than...
So what I'm trying to allude to here is that you can have like a really good management team. So they might deal with the day-to-day operations of it. So I'm not pulled in. I don't actually know even who half the clients are in those particular firms. But those people are running it, they're managing the staff and the rest of it. But who is actually growing and strategizing and doing those businesses? Now, obviously I work with them, but in order to come up with those kind of paths. But actually it's inherently difficult if you're also doing that kind of managing director or CEO type role in a business, to also be that master marketeer or whatever that James refers to quite often. And that's where I struggle a little bit, of trying to be that marketing person for all of these different brands. So hopefully via this channel, we'll kind of bring it all in under one, and then we'll also be able to give people some really good advice on the podcast and the rest of it to help them on their journey. So shameless little plug. If you want to get on the podcast, email info@matthewcox.biz. Get yourself booked on. Hayley will look after you, give you the forms and the rest of it. It's slightly different to James's podcast. You fill in the form and then we have an open and frank chat, hopefully face to face. If not, later in the year we'll be able to do it over the internet like they're doing there. Hopefully we'll remember our cables. That's not a dig, but just a little reference there. But yeah, hopefully we will be able to do that for you as well. And it's much more of a kind of two-way conversation and the rest of it. I'm not knocking James, but he's quite a flamboyant character. And obviously we've got, the IT issues here as well. I'm more of a placid person, so I'd like to think about the answers and come back. And everybody's situation is different. Your taxation and various things will affect you. So. A little shameless plug there. info@matthewcox.biz if you want to get on the podcast.
They are. When I do my networking or brand awareness or whatever I'm doing, it's always I'm kind of known for being Charles Cox. So those companies get a bit kind of dwarfed when I'm maybe, trying to sort of bring attention to them, I suppose. So I struggle a little bit with kind of spreading myself too thin across various bits when trying to grow them with those existing teams, because they're obviously they're at capacity running the show, almost acting like CEOs, I suppose, in those particular businesses. But
you shouldn't start new stuff unless you can afford the people to manage the new stuff or take it forward. And sometimes you have to take a step backwards to get everything your house in order, then to go again. I've had to do that multiple times in my career. And people look at all the stuff that I do, but the secret is I spend £1 million a year on my senior people to help me run my companies. And without that, it would all fall down like a pack of cards. And I'm prepared to pay people more than I earn out of a business for a lot of years to grow the business, which, I bought part.
And I get that, and I have done that as well. I've sacrificed my own income to fund staff and so on when perhaps we couldn't really afford them, but I wanted them. And it refocuses the mind. It makes you go, well, I have to afford this person or this thing now, so I therefore have to grow the office. I think the thing that we're kind of missing from the conversation here is that it's not about starting a business. These are businesses that we've bought into, and they had a team already running them. It's just that I'm supposed to be bringing something to the table in terms of marketing and expanding them, which I am doing. I'm just struggling a bit with it as I spread myself a bit thin. So what would be your advice to that? But I suppose, we'll have another go at a podcast at some point, and maybe we'll get his valuable advice, or somebody else. If you want to collaborate with me and maybe do an analysis on each other's businesses, then please reach out. The same email address, info@matthewcox.biz.
Pieces last year, and I've put loads of management team and resource into it. Probably won't make any money out of it for 5 years. A lot of people will do that, but that is the secret to having multiple streams of income. And that's the thing, if you really want to invest in these companies and grow, and if you get a company up to the next level, that's really smart. But you should be doing that, in my opinion, business first, then property second. You build those businesses up, you sell them, you have a big lump of cash, then you can do property in a big way. And that, to me, is just a better way of doing things.
I suppose we're at a kind of two stages, really. Like, we're investing in those businesses, and you're right, they will see more money, or definitely those businesses will chew up more money as we grow them. But that's okay. I kind of have a kind of 5-year strategy with some of those things. But then when the excess cash comes, I find that, this kind of very vanilla buy-to-let type arrangement is not particularly a good use of the excess cash.
Can I tell you how I think, Matthew? I just want to say it one more time. Invest your excess cash into building amazing management teams, and then sell a business, have a liquidity day, take that liquidity and then do property, because you've got enough safety. You've got 14 around you. That's more than most people would dream of having that. You build up an arm of your business, you sell it, you pay 10% capital gains tax on the first million, 20% thereafter that in your lifetime. And wow, then you can really go and buy a property. You can buy whole blocks of flats. You can build blocks of flats if that's really what tickles your taste buds. It wouldn't be for me, but you could go and buy commercial warehouses and office blocks and do some really amazing stuff with property. So build the business first, then property second. That's what I would do. Obviously, I can't tell you what to do, but I think that's a much better way round, because you can invest 50, 60, 70 grand that you was going to put into a vanilla buy-to-let into really good management that could double your revenues and maybe triple your profits.
Yeah. Okay. That's I mean, it's fairly interesting, because obviously I've always thought of just taking those things because they're quite secure. You know, you get that kind of drip feed of income. But
yeah, I get that. But what I'm saying is, if you want to do property in a big way, you need to have liquidity. Yeah, I mean, we understand that. If you want to buy a big portfolio, if you want to buy a big property, you need liquidity. Like big liquidity, and lots of people that have made big profit money from property do it because they have got big cash and capital around them. And I think it's very, very hard to do from trading a business. It's very slow. To make big money, you build a business, you sell it, because it's the most tax
efficient thing I know.
So obviously this has always been on my mind, and it's interesting that was the sort of conclusion, because I suppose in a way that is correct, that you need that liquidity day, unless you're going to have massive profits all of a sudden. So if you've got really low overheads and then a really profitable business, then obviously you're going to get those cash reserves, and then you might be able to do this. But for your kind of average business running at about 10-20% of best profit margin, it is going to be fairly slow building that up. So yeah, I think that's interesting. James is obviously a lot more wealthier than me and has more experience with some of these things. So it's interesting to see people's opinions on it, because he's far more risky than if I spoke to someone else in my networking, who might be like, oh, I would just sit on it for a bit and do what you want with it. So and obviously it's always hard getting rid of your love child or whatever, your baby that you gave birth to and built up to this point, which I think later in the video he does refer to the fact that he wouldn't sell or hasn't sold anything. So it's not like it's a done deal. It is hard, and a decision that you have to make.
And then you can do property on steroids.
Yeah. Okay. And I suppose the most attractive time to sell it, I mean, you say otherwise, but it is really when I'm not really involved in it.
Absolutely.
As in, so someone can buy it from me, and
So you the number one. So what makes a business start being attractive for people to buy it with other people's money, not selling to someone like you or me, but someone that's like a venture capitalist or private equity. We're looking, bigger is better. The bigger the business, the bigger the multiples. So, you want to have good EBITDA, at least $1 million, preferably.
Love a good bit of EBITDA. Check out my video on EBITDA, where we look at gross versus net and then talk about EBITDA as well. Really useful tool for valuing businesses and seeing their profitability or underlying profitability with certain elements stripped out.
2 million of EBITDA. So that's earnings before interest, tax, depreciation and amortization, and an amazing management team that are running the business. So it's running without you, and predictable revenue streams going into the future. If you have those things, brilliant management team, sticky cash flow, sticky customers that you can predict what's happening in the business, and it's profitable, and there's opportunity to scale it. There's opportunity for arbitrage. You can say what the business could do in the future if you had unlimited amounts of cash. You sell that. You sell it for 3, 4, 5 million. Then you go and buy a property on steroids and you have a much better life. Challenge number 2, buying property seems to be slow or relying on mortgages rather than loans. How do you get bigger deals? You build a business and you sell it. That's how I would do it. Just as I said. Challenge number 3, working on your own brand. How do you go about doing this? JB.
I think you need to be really careful with this, because I think you could draw attention to the wrong stuff at the moment. And you're saying about sort of going out and networking. It sounds like you think of brand building as going to like a BNI or a breakfast meeting, and then what are you putting those sort of like direct small networking room leads into? And that's a very, very difficult way to scale your brand. I think you can get sort of micro famous in a town in that way, but I would be, getting clarity on what you're actually doing as a business owner before, because what you don't want to be is the guy who's got a few buy-to-let and got a bit of a property company and got an outsourcing company, because a confused mind never buys.
There was a lot of comments about the confused mind never buys, and I actually really like that comment. And to be fair, not knocking James, but it was probably the best thing that came away from that, because it is a really good reminder of confusing people with what you actually do. And the whole BNI, breakfast and morning networking thing, it does run the risk of you being micro famous. Even with our podcast and the rest of it, a lot of the people that are coming on are associates that I've worked with before and the rest of it. But you have to build that brand from day one. You've got to start somewhere with things. And to be honest, I've only really started networking since we came out the second lockdown, so end of 2021, beginning 2022. So fairly early on in my kind of networking journey, if you like. I have done it on and off for years, but really committed to it now as the business has got into a point where I am the marketeer in the business. I'm the business development manager, whatever you want to brand me.
Brand is just your reputation, so you need to get clear on what you want to be known for, if that makes sense. I think the shift that you potentially make is like property entrepreneur.
It's literally what we're doing here. We're just calling it entrepreneur, enterprise, whatever you want to call it. So this is the brand. So I suppose, fast forward, we've already done this and run up to this. So it's good to know that kind of thinking is aligned with what we've already decided to do prior to this podcast. So that's reassuring.
Look, I think personal branding is. It's funny. I was speaking to Daniel Precy, who had done a very long form content. I said, "Oh, what if someone doesn't want to do personal branding?" And then he said, as quick as a flash, and it made me rethink things. He said, "Well, there's lots of things you don't want to do in business, because you got to do it, haven't you?" He sees it as that important.
Yeah.
He just went,
"Yeah, he's right.
No, just do it." It's like I don't really like exercise. Well, I don't like exercise. James Sinclair doesn't like exercise, but I make myself do it because I think if I want to live past 50 and live healthily past 50, now's the time to start doing it. So I do think personal branding is really important for business owners. But something you said there, I've even wrote it down. A confused mind never buys. I absolutely love that. And I think if you're all things to all people, it can be very difficult, can't it?
Nothing to no one, ultimately.
And I think the fundamental question is, how does James be all things to all people, but nothing to nobody? That is the issue that I have, is very similar to where he is with his multiple, dinosaur parks, theme parks, the Rossi ice cream, and then various other party outlets, and he's got nurseries as well, and a buy-to-let portfolio. So how do you kind of get around that, I suppose, maybe for a future video?
Because at the moment, your breakdown of time is, I had it somewhere.
65% marketing, 35% operations.
Yes, if you get rid of the 35% operations because you outsource it to great people through the company that you own, then you're a bit more off to the races, and then it's more congruent to the message and the brand that you're trying to put forwards.
Matt, can I ask you a question, Matt?
Yeah.
Are you satisfied with where you're at in business right now?
No, I suppose. I've got I feel like I have quite an ambition and burn, and I think there was something where you said
I suppose, are you satisfied? Yes, I'm satisfied very much in my personal life and all the rest of it, and I'm happy with where we are. But I'm an entrepreneur. I want to continue to grow. I love creating a business that employs people, seeing them happy, and creating an environment where people can come and do their best work. A nice, sizable business that people respect and value. So in that sense, maybe I'm not satisfied with where we're at, because there's always a bigger goal. That's the kind of person I am, and he's very much like that as well. And I think that's just an inherent trait with entrepreneurs, that they're always going to look for new stuff to do. If there's a gap in my diary, I'll probably fill it with something. Not go and sit on the sofa and watch some reality TV. So, I think that's where I'm coming from to the reaction to that question.
one of your podcasts that you have like a disease. You're just attracted to like just entrepreneurialness and like trying to grow businesses and be like that. And the money and the rest of it is just a byproduct of that. I just enjoy it. Like I've enjoyed really getting Charles Scott's to the size it is, and I enjoy the next challenges. Not satisfied because I don't know when what the end goal is really, I suppose.
Do you know, the thing is, I don't want anyone that's listening to this thinking that James Sinclair is anti-property. I love property. I absolutely love it. I think it's an amazing way of building long-term wealth. I think it protects you as a business, but people try and shortcut the system to invest into property, I think, too early at detriment to the trading business. And I probably put my hand... the reason I get so frustrated about it is because I think I'm guilty of that as well. I've put too much money into property too quickly, when if I'd have put it all into my trading business, once you're not a fool and you know how many beans make five in business, you should give as much cash into the business growth as possible and build some security around it in case it all goes wrong. But I think you've done that, mate. You've got 14 buy-to-lets. Most people do not have that. And you now need to build effective management teams and sell a part or one of your business lines within the next 5 years, have a liquidity day and make a ton of money to put into property in a big way. Right, you got 5 questions you'd like to ask us. JB is going to read the questions out. If he gets them wrong, you say, JB, you've got it wrong. And
right, question, because we're a bit pushed for time, so we're going to do it rapid fire.
Rapid fire, let's do it.
So question number 1 was, how do you manage rapid growth?
Build management teams.
Great answer. Question number 2 was, how do you structure bigger business and property purchases so you better reserve cash?
Well, you have to borrow money, but the way that really happens with ease is you build something and sell it, and then you go in a big way. Every single super successful entrepreneur that you meet here in the UK, or not meet, but know of, especially in America as well, there are business sales in their journey that has allowed them to go to the next level. Elon Musk selling PayPal allowed him to really accelerate. Richard Branson selling Virgin Records allowed him to massively accelerate. Alan Sugar selling Amstrad allowed him to massively accelerate. You've just got to do those liquidity days.
Question number 3. Should I work on my personal brand, and will this help the business? We've already covered that one off already, haven't we?
But I think the short answer is yes, but you've got to put the effort into it. Yeah. Building personal brand, I think JB and I are both in this space. I mean, he more than me, helping lots of other people. Lots of people doing it now.
Yes.
Doesn't mean that you shouldn't be doing it.
No.
But it is like exercise. You can't just make one video and watch the millions come in. You can't just make one podcast and watch the millions come in. It is a constant process of...
I think also you have to be aware that sometimes it's not about watching the millions come in. For me, it's about giving back to the community of entrepreneurs and the rest of it, and helping people. That may expose me to bigger deals or people getting in touch and the rest of it, and that is a byproduct as far as I'm concerned. I'm not particularly thinking the channel is going to get monetized or all this sort of stuff. I just enjoy doing it. I'm fortunate enough I can do something with my life that I actually enjoy, even if it isn't particularly earning money or profitable.
A lot of work, but if you do that consistency and a lot of work, it is an asset that is so valuable.
100%. But don't start to do it without clarity.
Yeah.
Because that's really, unvaluable. How do you source deals, and is it possible outside of your local area?
How do I source deals? I write letters to people. I do outreach. I have agents contact me, and I have an investing day every single month.
You've said this before.
Get really good at property. You have to go and view stuff. You learn stuff. You get to meet agents, and most people just use the internet.
Desktop research, they call it, don't they?
Desktop research, whereas I am like...
Yeah, that's classic desktop research. You do need to get out and go and see these properties, meet the estate agents and the rest of it. And sometimes you need to put in cheeky bids and offers and the rest of it on these things. At the end of the day, probably you'll see 20 properties and put a bid in on 5 of them and probably win none of them. So if you're doing it properly, I always think that your offer, if it doesn't embarrass you slightly, is probably not low enough to start with.
Like get in the car and go and view things.
Walk the streets.
Walk the streets. I still think that's hugely valuable.
Right, and you had one more question, which I now can't get to because somebody's trying to phone me. Hang on 2 seconds. Final question was, when do you... Oh, this is going to be good. When do you know when it's done?
When's what done?
It.
Yeah, well, let's ask him, what does he mean?
What do you mean? What do you mean, Matt?
Building the business, your liquidity day, as you refer, like when you're done, like I'm now ready to move on to the next big thing or whatever. How do you know?
I think finish
point?
dates on business plans for your business.
So you can see in my questions, I'd already preempted the fact that actually maybe when it's done, I don't know if I want to sell anything, but how do I know when it's done, I suppose? Like, just because there's a good management team in doesn't mean it's just not going to fall all apart when I sell it or whatever. How do you actually know when you are done? Like, is there a gut feeling, or is it like a target that he goes for or whatever? Everyone's going to have a different interpretation of that. And really, I'm just trying to gather information from my peers, colleagues, influencers, whatever, so that I can have a rounded decision on that when it's done.
Business. And a lot of people, do slag me off on this. They go, I never want to finish. I don't need a business plan.
Is that how they all talk as well?
Well, if you go and speak to
hear it in your
private equity, venture capital, people that are investing money, they go, I'm going to put £1 in. What's my pound going to be worth in 5 years or 10 years' time? So I do think you should say, in 5 years' time, my business will have this profit, this revenue, this team, this culture, and this is the role I'll be playing in the business. And then it's ready to sell. And then that's how I would work. And then you would create another business plan for the next 5 years, and then the next 5 years after that. Even if I have no intention of selling it, I don't think I will sell Rossi. I don't think I'll sell Marsh Farm or any of my businesses. I mean, I'll have to sell some of them one day because, I'm going to die. And one day, not now, but, eventually there
Hopefully
needs...
not before lunch.
And for all the things that I've just spoken about, you need to create liquidity days. So what makes Rossi valuable? A big enough turnover with a big enough profit that then someone goes, that's an investment, that's not a business, and I want to pay multiples for that business, that investment. And that's why people like our guest today, Matt, who's on the show, is prepared to put big hard cash for such little return into buy-to-let property, is because subconsciously he sees that as an investment and not a business.
It would be interesting if I get the opportunity again to speak to James, because obviously he's going on about having my liquidity day and the rest of it, but now we're having a conversation about the fact he probably wouldn't sell his businesses at this stage. So I don't know what his long-term plan is, but I presume at some point he will sell some things, whether or not that's immediate or not. So it's strange because he's obviously on a much bigger scale going through the same emotion that I might go through, or any business owner, where you're not sure if you want to sell it. Is it ready? I like the business. What am I actually going to do with the money? Am I just going to sit on it and then I don't know where my next move is? So, it's complicated for us all, no matter where you sit on the scale, I think.
And the idea is to get a trading business and turn it into an investment, sell it, then put that cash into property, stocks and shares, bonds or whatever that's going to protect your wealth over the long term. And that's the playbook.
There you go. Matthew, have you had all of your questions and more answered? Are you elated, delighted, inspired, motivated?
It's really good to talk and just sound other people out. I'm a big fan of you are the percentage of the people that you hang around with most and the rest of it, and it's always good to reach out to other people and get opinions.
Well, if you love the show that much, Matt, it now comes on to my cheeky little plug. Are you going to come and see James Sinclair live at the Leicester Square Theatre for the business broadcast live? It's going to cost you about £32. Are you going to be there?
Overall, I think it was really good, useful information. Obviously, you cannot agree with everything. You don't have to. That's not what it's all about. But liquidity days, confused minds, don't buy, all that sort of stuff would be interesting. And look forward to going up to his live show at Leicester Square. Hopefully I didn't get heckled too much for doing this video, but I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope James has enjoyed it as well, and useful tips from JB too, and it always makes you laugh him in this little mixer machine thing. Anyway, I'll see you in the next video.